without further ado, we call this It Started with a Monkey, a short history of the Sanford Municipal Zoo or Central Florida Zoo. I kind of want to talk about this a little bit, kind of put a little disclaimer. Zoos are very interesting, and I think our zoo actually kind of mimics what a lot of zoos in the entire United States were doing at the same time. Starting from what was somebody's menagerie to something of entertainment to now a place that is really for the animals and conservation. So some of these stories, not best like zoo practices for good reason. So we'll be talking about kind of that shift and transition throughout that time. So I just kind of want to give a little bit of that disclaimer before we start. So originally, according to Charlie Carlson, there was a gentleman named Cy Smith. He was a custodian at the Elks Club. I tried looking for where he lived. I found maybe a guy like a Cyrus Smith that lived in Oviedo that might have been that person. But he apparently received a monkey, and the family story was that monkey, he was friends with a guy from a circus, and he wanted to retire that monkey from the circus, and Cy was like, I will be happy to take that monkey off of you. And then he was like, you know what? Maybe the monkey is a little too much. I don't know why he gave it up to the fire department, but I feel like maybe, I can't say for sure. I don't have any primary sources telling me exactly why this monkey, whose name was Jack, was given to the fire department. And eventually the fire department put cages out there. This is the same fire department, if you go to the firehouse that's on Palmetto, same one. So just imagine there was a bunch of cages out there and there were animals. And by 1924, there were multiple people donating various animals. There was apparently a dog named Bull, who was a bull Staffordshire Terrier, I believe, and him and Jack used to do little shows. There were a whole newspaper article discussing how they were co-workers. And there were also possums, raccoons, ducks, geese, gators, and a porcupine. I don't know if this started because we didn't really have like animal control back then. And they were just like, I can't take care of my pet raccoon, I bottle fed. We don't really have a whole lot of information about these original starting animals. So eventually, you know, it's gonna become a little cramped. If you've been to that Palmetto like jailhouse, you've seen how it is, the fire station. And so eventually they decided that we were gonna have a Sanford Municipal Zoo. And this was chosen with help of city officials, as well as the JC, which is an organization that helps raise funds, and the police and fire department. And so the zoo was located on the corner lot between Park and the Lakeshore. This was before the bulkhead was made. And it is where the modern City Hall is now. So all of you make your jokes about City Hall being a zoo. I know, I'm a city employee. So this is the time where we get the old zoo. This is called the Sanford Municipal Zoo, and it greeted locals and tourists of visiting the city. In 1934, the Florida Zoological Society at Sanford was formed to help raise funds and expand and improve the zoo. They drafted up, by May 5th, 1934, expansion plans for the zoo. They also wanted to make it an aquarium, which was very interesting, and those are like plans. These plans were never fully realized, but we did get the hallmark, which a lot of you guys remember, which was Monkey Island. Interestingly enough, Monkey Island came from the director when he went to the Chicago's World Fair in 1934, and he saw a zoo exhibit called Bring 'Em Back Alive, and saw they had a Monkey Island. So that was the inspiration to bring that style of putting a bunch of monkeys on an island. And this is also the time period where we start getting a lot of these stories about animals escaping and going downtown. I've had multiple people tell me like, oh, I was a zookeeper and used to put like a board to get to Monkey Island. And then if you forgot to take the board out immediately, then the monkeys would go out. And this is not the only escapee, to the point where I have no idea how many escape attempts happened in Sanford. Apparently various monkeys escaped, an otter escaped, even the lion once escaped, I think a bear once escaped. And this is also a time period where people are kind of using these animals kind of as a way to show off tourism. I've heard stories that sometimes that they would keep the lion in the jail next door over like City Hall to kind of scare inmates, which I don't think is best So you kind of get these like fun stories that go around about these escaping animals. That being said, by 1947, the zoo was the largest in the state and a major powerhouse for tourism within Central Florida. It had 109 birds and 121 animals that was in its collection. So I'm going to show you a video of the Municipal Zoo if this works out. This is a home video. Please don't try to comprehend the words that are being said. It's not in the best quality, but it does kind of show you how the zoo's environment was like.
And this is at Sanford. This is one of their larger zoos there. They get quite a collection of different types of birds at this zoo, and a lot of alligators. If you watch in this moat around the edge of where the alligators are, you'll see that when we get back to it, that there are goldfish in the water. Right here, you should see the goldfish. There they are. There's Alda standing next to, I think they call it a hibiscus tree. It looks like an orchid.
So that's kind of the end of it. That was from somebody who donated that from their home video collection. We're not going. So, kind of modern zoo science catches up eventually with the zoo. As I mentioned, modern zoos has definitely a different set of ethics compared to the one of past zoos. Again, this comes from originally, they started from menageries of the wealthy to entertain the wealthy. Then it was a place for the normal citizen to witness animals that they would not normally see. In the 1970s, there was a big movement in ecology, and there was a major focus on turning zoos from places of entertainment to focusing on conservation. And you especially see this with the statements of the AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. They're kind of like the big, like, this is our standard of ethics in all zoos, and getting like AZA accreditation is like a big deal and really important. So you see this focus on trying to make safe spaces for the animal to protect the species for future generations. The Sanford Zoo by the 1970s was suffering from that focus on entertainment to that of conservation. Within the museum's collection, because again, this was run by the city of Sanford, we have from, I believe, 1968 to 1970, various memos or letters that were given by people discussing their feelings about the zoo. And in this time period, you're seeing a lot of letters of people kind of basically saying, like, I feel like these animals need better treatment, at least to the public's eyes. So we have one letter she sent to the Sanford Herald, and that was copied to the city. She tells a story about how she noticed like 3 young boys, and they were just filling their pockets with gravel and pelting monkeys. And she was absolutely horrified that there just wasn't enough staff to, properly kind of prevent these kids from doing that. She also was very upset to say, the sight that distressed me the most was the size of the cages that the lions were housed in. So she was deeply concerned. We also have a zoo superintendent wrote a memo to the city manager in 1968 describing how some of the boys from the Naval Academy at that time just decided to wade into the alligator pools and fill up water balloons and then just throw those water balloons at animals. I think the description talked about 2 leopards being so afraid they were climbing up the walls of the cage. Again, not enough staff to kind of prevent that from happening, as well as education of like, do not do that. Don't stress an animal out because you just want to see them move. We also have from this time period various cases of people having their fingers and arms bitten off, or just bitten in general. I think there was one zoo employee who had his pinky a bit off. I know a case from like the 1930s of a girl who was a nephew to a prominent citizen in Sanford, Mr. Estridge. She had her finger just bit clean off. And then I think Mrs. Hood, who for a long time was taking care of the zoo, she had her arm bitten. They were worried about this in this memo. Specifically, they were talking about there were so many cases of animals biting children's fingers, and the city was having to accrue the cost of the rabies vaccination. And they didn't want to keep on doing that. One of the problems is that cages were very up close, so young kids put their hands within those cages. And I've heard a lot of oral histories of people just saying like, oh, my parents would drop me off at the zoo and I would roam. So there wasn't a whole lot of supervision or education of just don't stick your hands. But there was a sign. Apparently it says in that memo, like the children are not reading these signs of do not stick your hands in. And we know by 1967, the Florida State Board of Health was actually sent to inspect the zoo after several complaints. They said it was fine, but this was looking really bad for the city, and the city was accruing multiple costs, and they were like, we need to move this zoo. And then, okay, so they wanted transition to the new zoo. This is actually a map of some of the locations that they were thinking to propose the new zoo site. And they wanted to focus, it seems like more on conservation and animal welfare. That being said, the city also just wanted to completely rid their hands of the zoo. They thought it was essentially pretty much a money pit, and they realized they were way over their heads of what they could do. So by 1971, the Sanford Commission voted to phase out the zoo, despite them like proposing the land and finding the land. So we have letters within our collection of many residents signing petitions and writing letters begging them to change their mind. But nobody really wanted to take it up. So what happened was Sisters was formed. The Sanford Interested Sarahs, which is a women's organization that helps them do fundraising to encourage rejuvenation of the zoo, stepped up and created the Central Florida Zoological Society. And it was these women that kind of became a powerhouse and raised the money via grants, local government agencies, local businesses, and generous donors to raise money. And so the new zoo finally opened in 1975. I have a video here that I'm actually gonna wanna play at the end. It's Jack Hanna, but it's a little long, and he kind of discusses that like, I was hired when I was 28 to be a zoo director. I had no idea what I was doing. Some of the things I was doing is just not what we do in zoos today. And I gotta give someone credit for admitting like I made some mistakes, because you don't see that these days anymore. But hopefully at the end we can see that, because he has a lot of good zoo stories, which he talks about. But I'll do that at the end. So the new zoo, you guys are gonna be able to talk about this much better than I can. So you see that the focus eventually becomes more on conservation and animal welfare. There was some other bumps that happened. So when this new zoo came about, it was constantly underfunded because it was kind of very touch and go fundraising for it. To make matters worse, there was even a question about closing it not even a few years after it opened up. One idea was to move it closer to Orlando, and many citizens were like, absolutely not. I know many of you from Sanford especially are like, I do not want to be associated with Orlando. We are Sanford, we are our own identity, and we are proud. And it very much felt like this was one of the first topics that was coming up to be like, let's kind of merge with Orlando. Something interesting to note that I didn't mention is when they moved the new zoo, when the zoo was closing, a lot of the petitions discussed that since Disney World just recently opened, that we weren't taking into consideration all the tax revenue that was going to come from tourists that would stop on the zoo on their way to Disney World, which I found very interesting, because you tend to not think like we would be, collaborating with that. But there was very much a hope that Disney World would create this economic impact within this area. So also in the 80s, there were these nasty legal battles. Turns out, like, this is an important thing. Know who are are people on your board and who can vote for your board, because it can come by to bite you in the butt. Al Rosen was the director after Jack Hanna. It seems like the difference was he wanted to focus on wildlife that was more not indigenous to this area, while the the society that was made wanted to focus more on animals that were like indigenous to this area. Again, showing a little bit of that conflict of conservation versus it. He was ousted, but in 1968, the Central Florida Zoo becomes an accredited member of the American Zoo and Aquariums Association, so AZA. So the big deal, because they're the big ethics member. So they were known back then as the American Zoo and Aquariums Association. Now they're known as the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. I apologize. Since then, the zoo has gone through several rebrandings, such as being called Zoo Orlando, the Central Florida Zoo, and as of 2007, it is called the Central Florida Zoo and Botanical Gardens. And with that, I kind of want to hear all the amazing programs that you guys are doing currently. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
Just a comment, to Brigitte's comment about AZA. AZA, just to give you an idea, to be accredited, it's about 10% of all the zoos and aquariums in the United States only that are accredited by it. There's over 2,300, parks in the U.S. So to be an AZA accredited zoo is really a big and important thing.
Yeah. So I kind of want to show that focus, that's really important that the zoo is now this amazing kind of resource for conservation and education. Yes?
I just wanted to share with you that Cy Smith was custodian of the Elks Club, and that's where he took the monkey. And the story is that the monkey embarrassed the lady so much, they shipped him off to the fire station.
Oh, I didn't hear that about that. That's why he was being a little too monkeying around with the lady. I had to make a bad joke, sorry. And if anybody also wants to give, are we going to wait till the end if anybody has stories about the zoo and their memories, or do we want to do it now?
Let's wait till the end.
Okay. So, any last questions before I hear all the exciting things? Okay, fantastic.
Thank you very much, Brigitte. Thank you very much. So, I'm sure, as Richard can attest, no fingers are being bitten off anymore. I hear those stories and I go, how did we survive this long? I don't understand, but we did, and we're here. So I would like to invite Richard Glover up. He is going to tell us what's going on with the zoo. He's the CEO. Tell us what's going on and what's going on in the future. So thank you very much. Some of those stories are just terrifying to hear. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the zoo now, and then I'll tell you a little bit about where we're going. First of all, we've been in the process of strategic planning over the course of the last year, and in part of that, we've created a new mission and vision for the zoo that we feel like really encompasses where we want to go in the future and who we want to be now. So our new mission is we create connections that inspire people to take action for wildlife. And the vision is a world where all animals and people can thrive together. And that is a very ambitious vision. But something that we feel like is really important, especially in a place like Florida where we are living with black bears and so many other things in our neighborhoods. And so we really want to get to a place where people understand how we can coexist with those animals. So one of the things that's really important to the staff here is we want this to be a zoo for everyone. We want everyone to be able to come here and feel welcome and comfortable. There are a lot of places in this world right now that not everyone feels comfortable. So we want to be a place that everyone can come and have a good time, enjoy themselves, and not worry. To the point Dino just made, we have been accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums continuously since 1986. You get reaccredited every 5 years. They come do an inspection. They look at every aspect of your business, from the animal care to your physical facilities, to your business practices, your finance, your education department. Every part of the zoo they look at to make sure it's up to their standards, and they are very rigorous standards. At this point, there are about 3,000 places that have licenses across the country to hold animals. Not necessarily all zoos, but licenses to hold and display animals. And out of that, 240 zoos and aquariums are actually accredited by AZA. So we're really proud to have held that accreditation for this long, and it's really important for us to stay accredited by AZA. We are currently, that first monkey that was given to the firehouse was in 1923. So So this is 100 years that we've been part of the Sanford community. And we're really excited about that. We are going to celebrate that probably January or February. We wanted to wait till it cooled down some because the summer has not been conducive to a nice big party outside, and also to give us a little more time to get everything together we need to. We have a lot of fall events and we want to give it its own space, but we want to celebrate that. I mean, be part of any community for 100 years is really something. And, you know, we listen to that history and some of it isn't great, but there are so many other industries too that can look back at their history. It's not great, but we're really proud of where we've come in that time. And the fact that now the focus really is on the animals, it's on the community, and it's on doing the right thing. One of the things we're really proud about, a few months ago, we got nominated by an independent panel by USA Today to compete to be one of the top 20 zoos in the US. We finished, we don't know exactly where we finished, so they only released the top 10. We didn't make the top 10, but they stopped a few days before the end of the competition. They had a list and we were at 15 when they stopped showing. So, but just to be nominated, to be part of that top 20, when you look around at some of the zoos like San Diego and St. Louis and Bronx, and that was a huge honor to the staff, to all of us to be thought of as that kind of place. Another thing that's important to us, the train is back. So we were without a train for about 4 years. Can't tell you, when I got to the zoo, I've been here about 1.5 years now, and when I got here, there were 2 questions I got from everyone I met. When are you going to have another train, and are you doing the Asian Lantern Festival? Well, the train is back, and we have done the Asian Lantern Festival again, and we'll keep doing that. But we're really excited. We appreciate, it's got a list of some logos, some of the sponsors that helped us bring the train back, but it's really fun to watch families who come and tell us, you know, grandparents that say, I brought my kids and we rode the train, and now their kids are riding the train with us, and it's just fun to see all the smiling faces and know the history behind that and how people really enjoy that. It really connects them to the community. So attendance-wise, I think to a lot of people this will be a surprise, but our biggest fiscal year we ever had was 21-22. Our fiscal year is from July 1st to June 30th, and we had over 440,000 people here. Last year, we were closed for 28 days after Hurricane Ian, closed for a couple of days for the hurricane after that, so we really lost an entire month, and we still saw over 408,000 people. So we believe, had we not been closed for that time, we probably would have set another record. But we're approaching 500,000 people coming to the zoo every year. Most people think of this as a small kind of community zoo. 500,000 people is a lot of people. One of the other interesting things we found last year, 32% of the people coming are coming from 100 miles or more away. So while we are a community zoo, we also are drawing a lot of tourists. That's about 140,000 tourists a year. And they're coming from all over. So I thought this was interesting. These are some of our top feeder markets from around the country. I was really surprised to see, like Buffalo, New York. It's one of the top places we get visitors from. So it's just interesting to see the spread of that, but I think also very interesting, if you look at this was this year's spring break. This shows where people came from. And they are literally coming from all over the country. So I think part of it is we are an affordable alternative to Disney and all the parks and Universal. And so a lot of families will spend a few days there, but they need a few days that are a little cheaper. And this is an opportunity. And so we're really happy to see that we are serving a lot of tourists too. We know that's important to Seminole County. We're bringing that revenue, we're bringing those people in. And we're bringing people into downtown so that they can come to the restaurants and really learn more about this area. When you look at our demographics as far as household income, it's pretty typical. It's spread all over the place. Most zoos are this way. We serve a very wide group of people. When you look at actual demographics in terms of ethnicity, we mirror most zoos and aquariums, but we don't mirror the actual population in most places. Historically, zoos have struggled, especially to have enough outreach to get the African American community to come. And sometimes that's based on cost, and sometimes that's just based on historically, they didn't feel like it was a place necessarily for them. And so that's one of the reasons we've been trying to do some things to, you know, everything from having programs in education where Title I schools come, and some of those kids that might not be able to come otherwise are able to come for free. And then also, we've been doing, you know, different kinds of community days with our sunsets at the zoo where we're celebrating different communities and doing one for that community and trying to bring them out. And we're going to continue to do things like that. make sure they feel welcome here, because let's face it, we have some very large African American communities right here in Sanford, and they need to feel welcome here. They're part of this zoo too. This is part of their community. So education, this has always been a mainstay of the zoo and most zoos. This just gives you an idea of the breadth of the kinds of education programs that we have. We serve everything from preschool adults to, or preschool kids to adults of all ages. But over the course of the last fiscal year, served over 54,000 people in those programs. So that's a lot of people that come in. The other interesting thing is that breakdown of counties. So we're not just serving Seminole County, it's Volusia, it's Lake, it's all the counties around us that are bringing people in for those education programs. Because a lot of those other areas don't necessarily have very many other options for informal education. We're very proud that we draw people from all those areas. We're also very excited about all the volunteers we have. We see people serve about 14,000 volunteer hours a year. Understand, if we had to pay for 14,000 more hours of labor around here, we wouldn't be able to do it. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of value that comes to the zoo. And those are groups, it's everything from people that come 5 days a week and stand out at our exhibits for 8 hours sometimes every day, to the people that, corporate groups that come once a year, church groups, scout groups, things like that come and do projects. But all those people coming and helping us, it's a tremendous part of what we do, and it's really important to our operations. So we're so grateful for the people that come and spend their time and their treasures with us. We do a lot of events at the zoo. And one of the things people don't often realize, a lot of people think of zoos and they think, okay, this is a place I take my kids. And once my kids reach a certain age, you don't go back to the zoo. Well, obviously, you don't take your kids to Bruce to the zoo. So we do this event every April. It's a fundraiser, and it usually sells out. And basically, you've got craft beer tastings, you've got seltzers, you've got some wine, you've got live music 3 different places in the zoo, and the zoo's open, you see the animals too. So it's a really fun event. It's been really well received by the community over the years, and something that really helps us in terms of fundraising for our mission and being able to do that conservation work. One of the other big things we have is the Asian Lantern Festival. I mentioned this before. So we do this from mid-November to mid-January every year. We saw almost 93,000 people last year in 41 nights, and they came from all over. So this has become, in Seminole County, when it comes to holiday events, this is it. This is the one everyone's coming to. We grew from, the year before COVID was the first year we did it, and we had less than 50,000 people come. The next time we did it, we had 89,000, and last year almost 93. So word of mouth has been tremendous. It's an amazing event. I can tell you, when I came in and I heard about this, what I pictured in my head was nothing near what it actually is. The scale and scope, and the fact that as a botanical gardens, walking through with all these trees and boardwalks and things, complemented by these large lit up installations, it really does make for a beautiful night for families. It's a great date night, but we're really proud of this festival. It's been something that the community's really loved, and we're excited that for this year and last year, Publix has joined us as our sponsor for the event, and really proud to partner with them. So one of the other things, I mentioned this a little bit, our Sunsets at the Zoo, this is the first year, we've been doing it for a number of years. This is the first year we've actually themed them and tried to celebrate different communities and really make sure people felt welcome. And interestingly, our attendance for these this year has blown the attendance in the past out of the water. And we've done surveys after these each time, and about 70% of the people coming are saying the main reason we chose to come was the theme. And part of that is because it's an interesting night because, for example, tomorrow night, we're doing our last one, and it's Hispanic Heritage Month. And we'll have food trucks that fit the theme. We'll have entertainment that fits the theme. The whole zoo will be open. You'll still be able to ride the train, feed the giraffes, feed the barn animals, see everything. But there's a lot of arts and crafts. We have vendors that serve those communities come in to be a resource to. But it makes for a really interesting time. It's a little cooler in the summer and in the evenings. And it's also always been meant to be an accessibility program. So normally, if you're coming here, if it's a peak day, you're spending $24.95 as an adult to come in. For these events, you're here for over 3 hours if you want to be. And if you buy your ticket at the door, it's $8. If you buy it in advance, it's $6 online. And that's so that the community can come, those people, those families that can't necessarily come at other times, it gives them the opportunity to do that. We also have some packages for food, for 4-packs for families, to help discount a little for that too, if they need it. But that's, these have always meant to be something for the community to be able to come in and enjoy when they couldn't necessarily enjoy at other times. But adding these themes has really helped, and it's also been really great for the staff. I can't tell you all the comments I've had from staff after some of these, just saying it was so nice to watch this community, how excited they were that we did something for them, or some of these communities, that these people were able to come in and walk around and feel safe and relax and just enjoy themselves. So we're really proud of that, and we're really proud of what that's done for the staff too, in terms of just feeling good about what we're doing. So other things we do, typical things, these are a lot of the kid things. We do our Hippie Hop Adventure at Easter. We do our Zoo Boo Bash this year. We're doing 3 weekends leading up to Halloween. We do a Veterans Day, and then we do conservation days throughout the year where we talk about specific animals most of the time. Some are more general, like our Earth Day, Party for the Planet celebration, or Endangered Species Day. But we're really celebrating specific animals, specific species that are endangered that we work with here, and we do conservation specifically at the zoo of ours. We also do a lot of private events. So right here, but we do all sizes from 4 or 5 people all the way up to a few thousand people. Some of the interesting things we do corporate events sometimes where people will come in here and they'll do meetings and they'll have lunch and then they'll go out on our zipline course and do a team building out there and do those kinds of things. So we've got lots of different options for those things, but it's definitely a different place to do some of your typical meetings. So we're proud to host people here. And then the thing we're probably the very most proud of is our conservation work. This slide has too many words on it. I'll just tell you that. So one of the things that we participate in through the AZA are called species survival plans. And this is basically so that when you have a threatened, a vulnerable species, an endangered species, the zoos and aquariums are working together to create a population of those animals that's genetically diverse throughout all of the institutions in order to, if for example, they went extinct in the wild, we would be able to help repopulate that. So we participate, we have 30 species here that we participate in that. And some of those, we are just a holding facility for animals that will eventually go breed somewhere else. And some of those we're actively breeding. I'll give you some examples of those, but we also have a facility out in Eustis called the Oregon Center for Indigo Conservation. And our largest conservation effort is with eastern indigo snakes. So we breed these and we release them back into the environment where they originally came from, both in northern Florida and in Alabama. We've been doing this for a number of years. We have released back into the environment, at this point, almost 300 snakes over the last several years. We are the lead institution in the entire country on indigo snakes. We are the only place that breeds them. We work with partners that help raise them. We don't actually release them until they're about 2 years old, so they have the best chance of survival once they're out. We also try to track them once they're out to see, are they surviving? Are they reproducing? All of those kind of things. But really proud of this program. AZA has what they call Saving Animals for Extinction, which are specific programs with animals that are endangered, that you have a whole book that's been built about how do you care for these animals, how do you put them back in the wild, how do you breed them all. Our vet wrote the book for AZA Safe for eastern indigo snakes. So it's unusual that a zoo of this size is the lead institution on an animal throughout the country, and so we're really proud of this program. And it's doing real work. So eastern indigo snakes, one of the great things about them, a lot of people are a little iffy on snakes. The biggest part of their diet is eating other venomous snakes. So they help control those populations. So putting them back in the environment helps control how many rattlesnakes and other things like that are out there. So they're really good snakes if you want to pick and choose, and a lot of people like that. Also at that same facility, we breed and eventually release striped newts, and we've released about 1,800 of those into the environment too. But we're really proud of those programs, even though they're off-site. We do have some eastern indigo snakes here on-site, and it's certainly the place we've probably put the most focus on conservation-wise and put the most resources into, along with all of the SSPs. I want to show you all this video about one of our recent releases. It's only about 1.5 minutes long, but we're very proud of this.
My name is Michelle Hoffman. I'm a field biologist for the Central Florida Zoo's Orion Center for Indigo Conservation. We are here in South Alabama in one of the national forests, releasing 17 eastern indigo snakes onto the forest as part of our reintroduction project. Eastern indigo snakes have been in decline for many years due to habitat destruction, loss of environment, loss of ecosystems such as the longleaf pine ecosystem. So we are working to reestablish eastern indigo snake populations in areas where they've been considered extirpated for many years, meaning that they haven't been found in these locations. So we are working to bring eastern indigo snakes back onto the landscape because they help to control populations of a lot of other species in the area. This area has been managed by the U.S. Forest Service and is burned regularly in order to maintain a suitable habitat for gopher tortoises, eastern indigo snakes, and other imperiled species. The snakes were bred, hatched out, and raised for 1 year at the Central Florida Zoo's Orion Center for Indigo Conservation. At 1 year old, they were transferred to Zoo Atlanta, where they were head started for an additional year before they were released here in the National Forest.
So, I mean, this is the most successful eastern indigo snake project in operation at the moment. And we believe that we are going to be able to accomplish our goal, which is to have re-established a viable population of the eastern indigo snake into Alabama.
So ideally, if we do what he said and do what we hope, then in those areas, eventually we won't have to release snakes anymore, and we can focus on other areas to do that. And maybe someday we won't need to do it at all anymore. That's really the goal with the conservation work, is to make real world differences out in the environment, and in this case, often our local environments. So another one we're working on, we have a pair of emerald leopards, and there are only about 200 of these left in the world. So we have a breeding pair. We got permission this year to breed them, and we're attempting that. We're attempting introductions, which is dicey with large cats. The female has 100% of control, and she hasn't been terribly receptive so far. So we're hoping that changes, but there's only about 70 of these left in the wild, and they're all around the Russia-China border. So all it would take is one disease outbreak in that area, and you could wipe out that entire species. This is why the AZA SSPs are so important. Is if that happened, we would be able to repopulate and continue to keep a population in captivity so that we could make sure that species survives. So we're really excited about that. We're really hoping that they will get together. But just like humans, just because they're two of the same species does not mean they're going to be a match. So all we can do is hope and do everything we can to encourage them, but in the end, that's their choice. At the same time, we are soon going to be breaking ground on expansion of the habitat we have for the leopards in the zoo, so that if they do have cubs, we're able to display all of them in the same area together. Can't imagine how excited we will be if they have cubs and we all get to come see little baby leopards. So when we talk about what's going on next, I mentioned early on we've been doing strategic planning over the last year. So we've been doing strategic planning both in general, we've been doing master planning of the site itself and what can go here, and then also business planning, so that as we do this, we do it in phases, and we make sure that we do it in a measured way so that the revenue is there to sustain us as we continue to build. So it'll be a very slow process. What we really came out of it with, I think everyone wants me to say, tomorrow we're going to put shovels in the ground and we're going to start some massive change to the zoo. And that's not going to happen. The reality is we need to do capacity building, both in fundraising. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers right now on a stormwater survey. This facility floods like you wouldn't believe. It was built on wetlands, and a lot of this will never be able to be developed, but we need to find out exactly what we will need to do so that if we're building new things, we're building them in such a way that we raise the land where it needs to be so that if it does flood again, it's good. We don't want to make that investment, and we don't want to ask other people to donate money to make an investment that isn't going to be sound in the future. So we're going to be very slow and very deliberate about this, and quite honestly, I expect it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years before we actually break ground on a phase of the new plan. But the new plan will probably take us 20 years or more to do. But again, slow and deliberately doing this, we can't accomplish this. We have to do it the right way. And I know there have been strategic plans before from the zoo that have started and not finished. And that's the other reason we want to do this slow and do it the right way is this community deserves to get this done. And there have been a lot of starts and stops. And so we don't want that to happen again. You'll continue to see improvements though around the zoo. We continue to make changes and improve things as we go along. The leopard exhibit will be expanding. We're looking at a few other things that we want to do over the course of the next year or two. It doesn't mean there won't be any construction, there won't be anything new. And we continue to add new animals. I mean, just a couple of months ago, we added a pair of blue diker, which are the second smallest antelope in the world. And they are about the size of a house cat. And excitingly, they are a breeding pair too. They're both about 1.5 years old, and if they have babies, the babies will be about 1.75 pounds, and they get so tiny and adorable. We wouldn't like that either, but we continue to add that and other species as we go. Last thing I'm going to leave you with before questions. So one of our most beloved animals is PJ, a greater one-horned rhino. There's about 4,000 of these left in the world. He is a great representative for his species here, and PJ has a lot of personality. If you've ever come to an evening event here, PJ likes to put on a show for people. It's great. We all love watching him put on the show. Problem is the next morning, it's hard to get him up and out of his barn. He's a little tired. But what he'll do, we call them rhino zoomies, and I'll show it to you and tell you just a little bit more after. It's a short video, but he very much enjoys his audience. You'll hear them. This was at one of our events. What this doesn't show is the chute that he just went into. So generally, he has 2 yards, and that's one of them. And he really only uses that one as his bathroom. He doesn't really spend any other time in it. He comes back, he bakes around there, comes back to the gate. And then he waits for everyone to cheer, so he'll do it again. But they didn't cheer enough. So he kept waiting, and then he threw his head up. And then they started cheering more, and he did another round. Gives you an idea of what he's like. But we all love him. He's great. The other thing I would say, we have a number of animals here. A lot of people don't realize we have a lot of animals that come here and could not be anywhere else. A lot of people wonder, especially younger people, wonder why does the zoo exist? Why do we need to have animals in captivity? We have spider monkeys. We got 3 spider monkeys last summer. All infants that were confiscated at the U.S.-Mexico border because they were being sold into pet trade. They were all around the exact same age. 3 families, 3 troops were all killed to get those 3 individuals. So once they were confiscated, the government reached out to AZA and said, we need a place to place these. Where do you have that has room for them, that would be a place for them to become a troop together? We had, at that time, a 41-year-old male, he's now 42, who'd been a father many times when he was younger, and he was alone at that point. And so they awarded us those 3. And they had to learn how to become monkeys here. Like when we put them out on exhibit, they didn't know how to walk on a branch and swing from anything. It was all new to them. And they were scared to death, honestly. When they came through quarantine, they were so terrified after all they'd been through. Those animals could never live somewhere else because they were habituated to humans before we saw them, before the government took them. It's not unusual that we get animals like that. We can't take them all, but when we can, we do, and we get them alive here. In this particular case, they allow us to tell that story about the pet trade and why it's important that people don't participate in the illegal pet trade. It allows us to talk about how those kinds of animals aren't good pets. It also allows them the opportunity to grow up and have a safe place to be. But because they are from bloodlines that aren't represented in the AZA institutions at this point, they actually will become a breeding troop themselves, and they will help keep the genetic pool more diverse for everybody. So even though we'd rather them be in Mexico living their lives like they would have, at least something good is going to come out of it for them and for their species. So we have a lot of stories like that. We have 4 snakes we got as part of the sting from FWC, venomous snakes that were part of the sting where they got over 200 snakes that someone had illegally. So there are a lot of instances like that. Our bears were someone's pets for 2 months. That these animals, once they're imprinted on humans, they can't go back to the wild. There is no other option for them. They go to a sanctuary, they go to a zoo, or they go to a government facility where they're not going to have a great life, or they get euthanized. So, we want people to know those stories, to know, like, we don't just go and find a bunch of animals we want to show you and put them in exhibits. These animals are mostly here either because they're helping propagate their species, or they're here because this was their only option. So modern zoos are just very different than I think a lot of people understand, and we want people to understand that because we're very proud of what we do. And I can tell you, the hurricane was a perfect example. The staff here couldn't love these animals anymore. They had everything going on with the hurricane at home and their families and everything else, and all we wanted to know was, when can I come back on property and check on my animals? And we had a team that rode out the storm here instead of being with their families, and we always do. And it's always a volunteer thing, and we never have trouble having people volunteer to do it. So, the people that work here really truly believe in and love the mission and the animals and the education we do here. And so, I just want y'all to know the difference between these menageries and what zoos used to be and what they are now, because it's a really important distinction to those of us that work in this field. We do it for passion. It is definitely not the most lucrative field in the world for many people. So, very proud of everything we do, and we're very grateful for people like you that come and will listen to us talk about what we do and share it with other people. Questions?
I have a question.
Oh, you go.
Well, so I've always been curious about the Asian Lantern Festival. Do you
Yes.
guys own all of those pieces?
We don't.
Okay.
So it's a company that we do an arrangement with. They bring them. They usually come about mid-October, and it takes over a month to install all of them. But they own them. They travel from different place to place. You'll see these in zoos and other institutions around the country. But they allow us also to choose. So, for example, this year we were like, what would be really cool is if we had dinosaurs. So this year we're going to have a section with dinosaurs. But they'll bring the traditional Asian lanterns and also let us pick and choose on the rest of them. But it is, like, every one of them are new this year. They are hand painted. These people are amazing. It's really something to see. But yeah, it is. There's no way we could store those year round. So it works really well with the traveling.
Where are they from? Where are they?
So the company's from China.
China.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the attention to detail, I will walk around before we open at night, and I will walk by and someone will be touching up the paint on the eye on one of them. It's really amazing to see.
Yeah, it is.
We, in the future, we're going to be doing a presentation on Woodland Park, which was, some might say, the first amusement park here. Now, that's located on zoo property. That was a water park that was built many, many years ago. Is there any part of that that's still around? I'm just curious.
There's not. There's, out by our pavilion, and you drive by as you come in, there is a historical marker for it. That's pretty much it. We know somewhere back in that brush the old swimming hole is, but our understanding is it's completely covered over. It'd be hard to find even where it was. Because we do know a little of that history, which we were all fascinated and a little dismayed when we heard that they rented bathing suits for 5 cents. We didn't know whether they used them the same day or.
We have the same question.
But yeah, we don't know, we haven't seen any evidence of any of that. Anytime recently, yeah.
I got another question. I used to volunteer a while back, and I helped with the carousel,
Mhm.
with the little kids on. It went away.
It did. So it had reached.
Fell apart.
It had reached the end of its safe life.
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't want to risk anything happening, and because it was so old, finding parts, finding people that could work on it, it was to the point
It was so-
for safety,
yeah.
we needed to go ahead and.
Yeah, because they kept breaking every time I was in. But it was cute.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, oh.
No, we still have all the parts. I keep flirting with the idea of maybe optioning off the animals from it.
Yeah.
Might be a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's something we might do in conjunction with the celebration.
Ooh,
I would buy
put those
one.
in your house.
Yeah.
So if you just want to volunteer, how would we go about that process?
So reach out to us. If you go on our website, there's actually a section about volunteering, and it's got a link both for email and it's got a phone number for our volunteer manager, Emily Alfonso. And she can give you everything, all the various options. And that can be, like I was speaking about earlier, that can be if you individually want to volunteer on a regular basis, and that can be if you want to bring out a group for just a one-time project. And we have projects of all different sizes and types, and some of those are going to be manual labor outside, and some of them are going to be indoor clerical type work or different things. There's a wide variety of different kinds of things. So that's, if you go to the website, do that, or if you just want to reach out to me directly, that's fine too. My email is richardg@centralfloridazoo.org. So, but you know, we love our volunteers. We love to have any of y'all come out and spend time with us. And I will be honest in saying, there is something about spending time around animals that's just good for the soul. And if it's just that, it's worth spending a little time here.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
What's that? Thank you very much, Richard.
We very much appreciate you doing things that we do.
So some of